is Smita Kumar, and you're watching Medicircle. Today at Rendezvous with Smita Kumar, we have Mayur Sirdesai. He's partner, founder at Somerset Indus Capital Partners, which is a healthcare focused PE fund. Mayur has over 25 years of experience in healthcare, pharma, and FMCG, and has also worked in various roles. He has mentored several healthcare entrepreneurs. So, hi Mayur, welcome to Medicircle.
Hi Smita, how are you? And good to be on Medicircle. Thank you.
What was the genesis of Somerset Indus Capital Partners, and how do you work on your investment strategy in the healthcare sector?
So Somerset Indus Capital Partners is a healthcare private equity fund focused on the early growth stage of investing in healthcare. The fund was started in a little bit of a different way from normally what funds are started. I mean, this was founded by me and another friend of mine, Avinash Kinkre. Avinash has been a private equity in healthcare in US and Europe for 25 years. My background has been more in terms of operations, consulting, advisory in pharma and healthcare on the ground in India. But we are childhood friends. We grew up in the same area together. And in about 2010, Avinash was coming back to India fairly often. And we actually looked at operating businesses to build out in healthcare. So looked at things like hospitals, clinics, dialysis clinics, etc. And as we kept looking at the sector, we realized that there are many promoters out there in the SME sector in healthcare who were building good businesses, strong backgrounds, but they were struggling to scale up businesses for two reasons. One was lack of capital. You know, in those days, when we started in 2012, something in the range of 25, 30 crores. Banks wouldn't give it. Private equities were looking at larger checks. We thought this was a sweet spot. I mean, we decided that, this is something which we could look at. Also, we realized that scale up also requires support in terms of management, strategy, etc. So we said, instead of us building something, why don't we support entrepreneurs who are doing that? So that's how we created the fund. We talked to some investors in the US who we knew. They agreed to come on board. We raised a fund fairly quickly, and in 2012, sort of we got going. We invest. So the investment strategy basically is to invest across healthcare, but we have five sort of areas which we predominantly like and sort of evaluate. One is pharma and life sciences, which includes formulations, API, pharma packaging, CRO, CMOs, even things like consulting, analytical companies in pharma. Then we've got the whole space of medtech, which is equipment, devices, consumables. We like this sector because we think that this is pharma in the late 80s, early 90s. We see a very similar parallel, and we see, huge opportunity being able to build there. Diagnostic product services is another space which we like and invest in. Then hospitals and clinics, predominantly lower tier, and we look at asset light models, so not any real estate play. So that's the kind of thing. And then we've got the whole bucket of primary care, preventive care, wellness, nutrition, insurance, health insurance related. So that's the whole sort of play which we look at. So predominantly, our investment strategy is look for good differentiated platforms in these sort of spaces. Look for strong promoters. We look typically for companies with revenue, with EBITDA. So we look at mature companies. We don't look at startups necessarily. And now in the current fund which we run, with 100 million fund, we look at maybe somewhere between $5 to $10 million in investment sizes. Typical companies are between 50 to maybe 200 crores. So that's the sort of space. But for us, it's important to look at differentiated platforms. Typically, most of our investments are focused on tier 2, looking at sustainable impact. So that is where we come from. And I think that's been our motto, but also work with promoters to build the company. So our sort of hypothesis is we don't just give capital, but we put our entire bandwidth behind them to build it. So promoters understand that I mean, we are here to work with them and not just sort of sit back on the board and sort of ask questions. So I think that works well for them. So.
So more of a strategic investment where you are hand-holding the entrepreneur throughout the success journey.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. You have a strong network across the Indian healthcare sector with over 25 years of experience. So how has the journey been?
So I think my background is been in the healthcare sector. So I mean it's uh, I've as in terms of education, I'm an engineer. I'm a chemical engineer from IIT Bombay. But my family background has been healthcare. My both from my side, my in-laws side, etc. We're all healthcare pharma families. And I
Okay.
think that's where it sort of the genesis of it sort of started out. But I think ever since I got into the professional field, I have worked across sort of domains. I mean, both with MNCs as well as in Indian companies. Have run my own family business in pharmaceuticals. Built a large contract manufacturing organization, so build pharma plants, run marketing, sales. I actually built IMS Health, which is one of India's larger healthcare consulting companies. I built that business pretty much from scratch. So I've got experience across domains in pharma and healthcare, whether it is manufacturing, marketing, consulting, iBanking, so the whole thing. So I think this was the last sort of place to sort of build out. And when Avinash and I sort of came together, I think that it just sort of happened. I think at that point, but it's been a good journey. I think I think the whole space of working in pharma and healthcare across in the past has given me a fairly large network to work with, and that does make a big difference when you sort of invest, because when you're looking at promoters and investing behind them, it's important to understand them well. I think I've lived that space for a decade, running my own sort of business, so I understand what SME promoters sort of face, and I think that helps quite a bit in terms of when you're investing, and I think it allows us to be fair to them, both in terms of as investors as well as support them wherever required. So I think that's the sort of we all normally put it together.
Good to know. Which areas in healthcare do you think, or do you feel that the sunrise sectors, and do you think healthcare will evolve in the coming decades? Because healthcare has been the prime sector nowadays. I think after COVID, India has been all talking about healthcare, digitalization in healthcare. Even our prime minister is he's launching a lot of programs just to build this sector in a
Sure.
very proper and organized manner. So, what is your take on that?
So I think healthcare is always been a sector of choice when things don't are not the best. I think it's always been a defensive sector. So it's a sector which never goes sort of the negative. I think it's
Always
always a good
mission
sector to invest in. I think in today's times, probably it's more in focus because the pandemic is a health issue. So it creates more challenges to address. Um, I think healthcare, if I had to divide it in the Indian context, there are some sectors which are mature, some sectors which are growing, and I think some sectors which the pandemic has sort of fast forwarded. So if I have to take mature sectors, I think pharma and life sciences is a very mature sector. It's a very large sector. I think today that sector is dominated by the big boys. I think it's no longer something which new entrants can sort of make too much of an inroad into. And it's true, but even it has gone through its own sort of dynamics over the last 2-3 years, based on the regulated market side with US FDA challenges, India with price controls, etc. But I think that whole sector is coming out of that, and I see great opportunity. I mean, if in the last maybe few months, you've seen huge investments being made in the pharma sector. Also now API and intermediates is becoming a big sector because of all this China issue. I think it's a sector which will keep growing. I think it's though it's large in size, we expect it to grow significantly. I think India has it's still a metro tier one market for healthcare. I think there's a huge market in the lower tier markets to cover, and with our government coming up with Ayushman Bharat, etc. I think that whole space of another 200, 300 million people open up for sort of being addressed in the healthcare market. So probably healthcare, you in terms of people, probably it's doubling in the number of people it probably covers, or more. So pharma is that. I think corporate hospitals is probably similar. It's been a large sector, corporate and government sort of infrastructure in hospitals. But I think there again, tier two hospitals, tier two clinics, specialty clinics, etc., is another sort of sector which is sort of coming of age. I think two sectors which are now coming. One sector which is really coming of age is the diagnostic sector. I think diagnostics now is really maturing, especially on the services side. You've got 3, 4 large players. I think more players coming into the market, and this being a whole issue of COVID, COVID testing, screenings, etc. We expect this to continue in a very, very robust way going forward. I think similarly, diagnostic products, point of care, molecular diagnostics. So nobody had heard of a concept called RT-PCR, I think, till 5 months ago. Now everybody knows it, and that's why there are many sectors like this which has been fast forwarded because of the kind of situation which is there. I think medtech, we believe with the whole advent of the healthcare infrastructure being built out, medtech is typically a lag to that, and I think we see that coming of age. A lot of companies getting into manufacturing, government again supporting heavily in terms of local manufacturing. So we believe that is another sector which will really, really pick up. I think nutrition, wellness, all these were something which were slowly building out. And the reason being that all that preventive care, primary care depended on a payer mechanism. India is a self-pay market. Uh, I think healthcare if you say rest of the world, it is all a reimbursed payer market. And I think India with health insurance now picking up, also Ayushman Bharat coming in, that whole space of preventive care, primary care, nutrition, wellness, all this is sort of coming of age. And I think in that, I think COVID has expanded that further, fast forwarded it, because things like digital health, people's focus on immunity, nutrition, all that, which was probably something which would have happened 5 years ago, those opportunities have opened up. So I think the new sectors which are opened up, the sub-sectors, I think are molecular diagnostics, digital health, nutrition, all these kind of things, biopharma for that matter. I mean, biotech was again slower, but now with drugs treating masks in terms of COVID, etc., all we're seeing another. So I think it's a really good time to be in healthcare right now. I think there are so many sectors and so many opportunities to pick out. I think it's there. I can't say that one sector will do well and one subsector and the other won't. I think there is really the ability to build. But saying so, I think in India it is what really wins is execution. So I think even now the whole story still remains the same, that the person who can execute deeper and faster is the guy who wins. So I think that story still holds true. I think that's where we are.
You have been involved in the healthcare startup as a mentor and are an investment committee member of IIT Bombay, incubators like SIGN and BETIC. So, as well as an expert of the BIRAC Big Grant Evaluation Committee. So, how has the experience been, and how do you think Indian innovation can compete globally, because we have a lot of indigenous brains who are working well. So where do they start?
No, I think from my experience of working with BIRAC, which is the government sort of incubator in biotech and medtech, as well as with me being an alumni from IIT Bombay, I have sort of access, and I sort of work with the incubators there. I think what we see now is across the board in healthcare, innovation is not a challenge anymore. I think we see as much or more innovation happening in India as compared to other parts of the world. I think the big challenge which we still see is the lack of funding for it. I think the government through BIRAC does a lot to start funding. I mean, BIRAC typically will give the 50 lakhs, 1 crore kind of grants, which is really, really a good starting point. But I think that next stage of funding which is required is missing in India. And I think that is something which we are really looking at, trying to create an ecosystem around. because that is where innovations go through the valley of death. I think, and we see that happening more often than not, that people just can't find enough investments. I mean, you will have family offices do it one-off. You will have some other maybe corporates do it, but you don't have too many institutionalized funds in India, which do sort of startup sort of investments in a pace where you're moving from proof of concept to a commercial scale. I think, and health healthcare, I think there is always a lag, because healthcare has issues related to clinical trials and related to regulatory approvals, etc. So it takes a little bit of time, and due to which a lot of times investors sort of don't have the patience to work in that space. And I
Yes.
think that is the whole challenge which we face, but we're working towards it. I think if the intent is to create an ecosystem around it. So one of the things which we do as a fund is we typically invest in services and product platforms which have access to customers. We have large accesses to customers. Like somebody will have access to 15,000 customers, another will have access to 3,000 hospitals. We always give it open to any startup, saying that, if you want to build something and you want to do a proof of concept with hospitals or clinics or with some other customers, please use our platforms. uh, Maybe we'll work some way out by which both companies have a win-win, where you really don't need to invest, because always it is not a question of investment in terms of actually cash. It is investment in kind also helps quite a bit in terms of actually laying out a network where people can work. And I think that is something which we believe truly works to sort of build that ecosystem. Because on the other side, large Indian companies are also hungry for products.
Okay.
And Indian innovation, there is a sort of inbuilt factor of meeting the right price point. If you go to the West and say, I want innovation, their price points are very different. So when you try to license in products, etc., it never works out. So Indian innovation actually has that advantage, but getting it to the point where a commercial organization can bring it on board, I think that is the gap which you need to sort of work with and fill.
Mm. How do you get startups to work within your ecosystem of healthcare? Because there are so many. So, what is like the way? Do they approach you, or there is some meets, webinars where you invite them and they present their ideas?
So I think it's across the board. I mean, between us partners, we have 4 partners in the fund. I think we do get incomings a fair bit in terms of startups, etc. Also, I mean, it could be through the incubators we work. It could be through sort of meetings or webinars we sort of attend. We always give I mean, our intent is though we don't invest in them because that's not our mandate, but I think we believe that we have to support this ecosystem. So we are whatever we get on board, which we feel can work. Either it's to our portfolio companies or to other private equity funds which we know of. We will always make a point to connect them, because we believe that it's important to build the healthcare ecosystem and the startup ecosystem in India. I think the next wave will come from these kind of innovators. So it is not something that which can be ignored. I think it's something which we need to coexist with and evolve. I think that's where it comes from.
Definitely. How do you see the fund evolve going forward, and how can it contribute to the development of healthcare in India?
So I think healthcare overall is like you said, we are bullish on pretty much all the sectors of healthcare, and I think more so now. I think with COVID and its sort of impact in being an infectious, communicable sort of disease, I think India has a lot to teach the rest of the world. So we do see a lot of interest now of investors and companies abroad to understand how sort of Indian companies address these issues. So I think the market is there to sort of evolve with. I think what sectors you pick up, I think will be important. I think what we believe is, especially if we can help create sustainable impact. I think that is what our sort of theme is. I mean, we are not an impact fund, but we've sort of are by default being going into lower tier markets. We've sort of created that because we believe that unless you have somebody who can really build a profitable business and build it to sort of serve the masses, I think that is the story in India. I think the story has been played. I mean, if I had to look at India and say India versus Bharat, the India story is the probably metro tier one story, and that a lot of people know how to play. I think going that lower tier, it requires a very different mindset, and I think we like supporting promoters who go there because it just creates a very different business, and it really creates access and impacts a large patient population. And I think that is probably, if I have to look at going forward as we continue building this as a fund house, I think that is something which we would like to leave a mark on, saying, can we really create an impact and build companies in India which really have served the lower tier of the market? I think that is where we'd like to make the sort of positioning for ourselves.
So it was, I mean, really great to know that there are PE funds who are actually working for the actual Bharat, that is people living in tier 2, tier 3 cities rather than in these metro cities, because like be in Bangalore or Mumbai, we have much more exposure to such kind of firms and incubators, also people who we can reach out to share our ideas and to scale up our business. But when coming to tier 2, tier 3 cities, first of all, they are limited resources. They don't have these BNIs which we have, I think, in Mumbai. And
Sure.
it's a good thing that you are promoting businesses in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So are you looking at exactly chain of hospitals in tier 2 or tier 3 cities or diagnostic centers, or it is just single hospitals or diagnostic centers?
No, so we've supported sort of, if I have to sort of run through some of our portfolio, I think we have supported people across the network. So we have a chain of hospitals in Delhi, Haryana called Ujala Cygnus, which serves all the lower tier district towns in Haryana and now even in UP, Uttarakhand. We've
Okay.
got another chain which is in Rajasthan, which does lower tier in Rajasthan. We've got a diagnostic network called Krishna Diagnostics, which serves across 16 states. I mean, it is India's largest PPP player
Okay.
in both radiology, pathology, teleradiology, etc. And it has a massive scale in terms of the operation it runs in the lower tier. I think also we've got another company called GenWorks, which is India's largest tier two platform in medtech distribution. So covers 450 lower tier districts, 15,000 plus customers. So the intent is to sort of create large reach. But I think one thing which I would like to say in this whole thing is, I think when you work in the lower tier markets, I think one of the biggest players you have to learn to work with is the government. I think it is not a pure self-pay market. I mean, there is very little cash paying ability. Affordability is an issue, but the government has a large presence there and has a large pool of patients which it accesses on a daily basis. I
Yes.
think the government is very keen on sort of people who can work in this sector, and we've seen it is possible. I mean, there's a lot of issues which says, people saying it's not easy to work with the government. It isn't, but it's not impossible. I think the government is also learning. People who learn go into those markets have also learned how to work with it. And if you can really build a model based on that, which is a mix of private play, private insurance, government play like Ayushman Bharat, etc., I think you can really build a meaningful business on the ground. And I think that's the sort of play which we believe will really work in the long run.
Yes. So thank you so much, Mayur, for coming to Medicircle and sharing your insightful views with us. I think someday
Thank
you
you,
could
sir.
also be interested in funding healthcare startups and entrepreneurs. Presently, your mandate does not allow it, but as you said that you are still supporting them in all other ways, like just not exactly funds, but there are a lot of other things like networking and other things through which you can help them. Okay.
Sure, sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Bye.